Give the gift of a delicious burger from Bulldog Burger, a soup and sandwich from Sweet Pepper's Deli, appetizers and cocktails from The Grill, or even a wood-fired steak from Harvey's. Choice is the perfect gift. An all-in-one gift card from Eat With Us.
When choosing a dentist for our family, Tupelo Smiles was the answer for us. They greet us with warm smiles right when we walk in the door, and they make us feel so welcome. We love Tupelo Smiles.
Mississippi's trusted weather experts. This is Mississippi Live Weather at 5.
Well, hello there, Chief Meteorologist Matt Laupon here. Thank you so much for joining us for Mississippi Live Weather at 5 here in the Room to Room Weather Center as we are tracking a potential for active weather, including potentially some strong to severe thunderstorms later on tonight. I do want to welcome in the folks that are watching us on the North Mississippi Storm Chasers page as well, a simulcast that we will be doing from time to time during active and severe weather. Storms are likely as we head into tonight. How strong are they? That remains the big question. We do expect that some could produce severe weather, and at least some strong storm threat continues into your Tuesday as well. How deeply into our area has everything to do with the front coming through tonight that will bring a substantial change as we head toward Thanksgiving. It's a big shift downward in temperatures as the moisture moves on out of here. Looks like the holiday itself is in pretty good shape. What does that also mean for the Egg Bowl forecast? We're looking ahead at that coming up here in a couple minutes as well. Let's talk about the first 12 here for a moment. And again, not much activity out there at this point, and really as far as a lightning and thunder is concerned. We show that on the icon here, but more often than not, what we have out there is not producing a whole lot of lightning yet. That will increase as we go into the overnight hours. Those temperatures going to 59, you can see by 8 p.m. But look what happens to temperatures after that. We drop to 58 by 11 and then start going up somewhat more as we head overnight. See those wind speeds picking up? That is a sign of moisture returning as a warm front lifts in. For some of us, that could lead to a severe weather potential, but there are some real suspicions I have on how far north that moisture is going to end up making it into our area. We begin here with Mississippi Live Weather Radar, and everything we see out here looking back toward the Delta. I want to point out kind of here, we have some showers obviously showing up there for locations back out toward Hernando, Byhalia, Holly Springs. But look at this number there. This is the number of lightning strikes in this zone. You don't see any. So again, these are not particularly strong down here toward the Delta and Sunflower out there toward Greenwood, Benoit there. Again, 5-6 lightning strikes over the last hour. That's not much. Much wider shot shows that up to 1,000 on this wide shot here. A lot of that's with this line back here at Texarkana stretching down there toward Lufkin and Bryan, College Station, Texas area. That blue area you see there, that is a tornado watch that's in effect for locations that direction until 7 p.m. tonight. It is conceivable additional watches will be required east of that and maybe even into our area as we look toward the deep overnight time period. Here's our overall severe weather zone. Of course, centered for locations back out into Louisiana. There's just a lot more fuel, and we'll break this down in more detail here in a few minutes. Just tons more fuel down here, and so that's why this is easily the zone where we're most likely to see a greater number of reports as far as severe weather is concerned, and similar locations when we start talking about the tornado risk. When we look into this, you'll notice that this is just not particularly over the top, thankfully, in our area. I mean, we covered down here the southern part of Attala County, stretching to just north of Yazoo City. That's kind of our official coverage area at this point. That's not to say if we have a tornado, we won't go just a little farther south than that. But there's really kind of a northern cap on this because moisture is going to have to return through the Gulf of Mexico. And as that helps fuel things, that would enhance that risk. Damaging winds, same locations here, though that does extend just slightly farther north on the limited side here, where perhaps a couple of isolated reports could be possible, and hail mainly confined to locations back to the west. But I do think there's a slightly better chance to get some rotating thunderstorms than what we had come through last week. So something to keep in mind there. Amory, we are not set up for severe weather in Amory at this point. It would take a fairly dramatic shift, not an impossibility, but it's going to take some work. Thankfully, we're 64 for that temperature in Amory right now. Again, appreciate the North Mississippi Storm Chasers for letting us utilize these cameras. Look at that dew point there at 57. That's relatively drier air up here in the northern part of the state. I want you to compare that to the camera down in Rolling Fork, again with the North Mississippi Storm Chasers there. But you'll notice that temperature is just a little bit higher, and that measure of moisture pretty similar at this point. So this moisture is going to be arriving last possible second if it ends up being something that we end up really contending with here. We anticipate the overnight arrival of this, and before we get too far in here, that's the reason I do want to talk about weather call and make sure with an overnight tornado and storm chance that you're thinking about those multiple ways to find out if you're in the danger zone. Weather call should be at the top of that list there. You can scan that QR code below me. It will wake you up in the middle of the night if a tornado warning is issued for you, and you can go to sleep and not have to worry about things. That certainly something I have for my family and recommend for yours as well. The Mississippi Live Weather app is great, and I do think that obviously we should be thinking about that as one of those many layers there. But we oftentimes talk about building your armor, and the best way to do that, again, is not rely on just one source. Weather call, the Mississippi Live Weather app, you can see right there on the screen below me there for iOS as well as Android. You download that app there. It will keep you ahead of any issues that we do have. But be thinking about multiple layers here. Weather call, the weather app, Code Red, NWS Weather Radio, all good sources of information so that if you're in one of those danger zones there, everything's just kind of blowing up. That's kind of what we want, Gabe, is to make sure that there's really no question as to what's going on if there's active and severe weather, right?
Exactly, and that's the thing that we're watching as we head into those overnight hours, and emphasis on overnight is the fact that nighttime threat is amplified that much more whenever we're talking about that danger. But I do want to note that when we were looking at cameras earlier on, we were looking at winds as well as those dew points, and still in Rolling Fork, those winds were coming out of the north, and that's the big key to this forecast moving forward is how quickly does this warm front move into the area, and how quickly does this warm sector move in here as well. Of course, this warm front going to shift those winds and potentially drive in a little bit more of that moisture. So as of right now, we're basically getting stratiform precipitation right over the top of us. Down south, that's where we do have that tornado watch in effect, as Matt was mentioning, and that could be extended a little bit more east and a little bit to the north, extending into potentially our neck of the woods here in North Mississippi. So as we get into Futurecast, you can see how that warm front does lift just a bit as we get into those overnight hours and bring it back here on that extended outlook 10 p.m. You're already getting that warm front lifting a little bit far north. Now, I do want to say there's a big note in this because we believe that warm front is lifting just a little bit quickly on this run right here. Still positioned a little bit more towards the south. I would position it right around Highway 82 before that does lift further towards the north as we get into those overnight hours. So a lot of the storm activity is going to be indicative on the positioning of this warm front even by 3 a.m. before we get that instability moving into the region. As you can see, a little bit of that southerly wind building in before that cold front kicks in and gives us that lifting mechanism paired with that moisture, paired with that instability to really drive this forecast moving forward. So Matt, there's a lot of ifs even 24 hours out, and that is a good thing with the forecast because it means that that confidence isn't very high that this is going to verify. And that's still the golden question, you know, will it verify? Will the positioning be there? And of course, we'll keep eyes on it here at Mississippi Live Weather.
Absolutely. And so on kind of the wide shot here, one of the other factors is this isn't just one push. This is kind of multiple chances here. So you can see that front kind of moving into the area as Gabe was talking about. But then you'll also notice storms start to redevelop near that as we go into tomorrow morning, perhaps late morning to midday. So I think we're talking about an overnight threat late tonight, but potentially, depending on how quickly this front gets on here, a secondary threat before it pushes on out tomorrow. So looking for tomorrow's forecast, really we're south and eastern portion of the area in particular, and we'll break down those threat locations here in just a minute. But you see that coverage of rainfall 50% initially there. It is going to be wet and going to mess up your morning commute. We'll look at that school bus forecast as well, come up here in a couple of minutes. But then behind this, the coldest air doesn't get here through tomorrow. It's still kind of lingering behind. We could still have temperatures in the mid-70s for tomorrow on those west and northwest winds before much, much chillier. And importantly, drier air moves in, and that's what really works to clear us out and drop those temperatures heading toward the holiday and toward the Egg Bowl. We're looking ahead toward that forecast for the Egg Bowl and breaking down everything you need to know as Mississippi Live Weather at 5 continues here from the Room to Room Weather Center. We're tracking where those rotating thunderstorms are most likely and if they impact you right after this.
At First Choice Bank, we know you can't always make it before the bank closes. With our integrated teller, you can talk to a live person as late as 7 p.m. on weekdays and noon on Saturdays. It's not just an ATM, it's an ITM. First Choice Bank, your choice for banking.
People tell me how lucky my daughter is to have been adopted. But really, we're the lucky ones. Learn more at adoptuskids.org.
March 24th, 2023 was a normal Friday. You know, we knew the weather was not good, but we needed to take shelter, and we didn't have shelter. My husband and almost 2-year-old daughter, Ethan and Riley, they did lose their lives in the storm. We're still recovering from it. We'll always be recovering from it. Matt Lawpon cares about the community. He's not just there to collect a paycheck. I feel like Matt Lawpon has proven himself trustworthy.
Right now, from the Room to Room Weather Center, here's Mississippi's Chief Meteorologist, Matt Lawpon.
Well, good evening to you live there in the Starkville area. Let me fix what's behind me here so you can actually see live in the Starkville area as we show some of the pinks toward the horizon there, looking south on our Mississippi Department of Transportation camera. Thank you for joining us here on Mississippi Live Weather at 5 from the Room to Room Weather Center. That dew point, that measure of moisture coming in the upper 50s in Starkville. That's about as high as anybody is. That's got to come a lot higher for tornadoes to occur. We're hoping that doesn't get quite far enough north to impact you there in the Starkville area. Checking our camera, the Mississippi Storm Chasers back out toward North Mississippi Storm Chasers there in Winona, one of the drier locations, 53, that measure of moisture. Again, these clouds, flat. Gabe used the term stratiform to describe them. That's not really when we start getting vertical development. It's part of the reason why we're not going to be talking about really severe weather in the near term. But later on tonight, if everything goes the wrong way, it's not an impossibility. And I would be saying tomorrow, and we're probably talking after dawn tomorrow, when your peak chance probably arrives in Macon. Macon, that means we have more time, unfortunately, for that measure of moisture to get a little higher for you. 65 current temperature in Macon right now. Again, that mix of cloud cover. Let's talk about that fuel, which is important here. And it's a measure of moisture that we often show based on the same scale of the temperature called the dew point, the point in which dew forms or saturation occurs when the temperature and this are the same number. The point we're trying to make on this, though, is look at the fuel. We also look at this as fuel for thunderstorms. 70s, okay, that's enough to produce tornadoes typically. Certainly during our warmer season. We can sometimes pull it off with mid-60s, but even those are down south of Jackson at this point. This is all going to work its way northward, but it's way south still at this point. That's one of the things that hopefully will end up being a limiting factor as far as severe weather is concerned. We do have a risk area, as you can see plotted here. Those locations back from Meridian to Jackson to Crystal Springs to Brookhaven to Macomb there, kind of in that peak zone. And when we start talking about the northern part of the state and bring this all the way up to where we can see all the way to the Tennessee state line, most of this green area, meaning only a very limited number of reports possible out of what we're expecting here. So not impossible to get maybe one or two, but I think that's, again, more the exception to the rule than the rule. The tornado threat is there. It is primarily, though, obviously, in this yellow zone that we're talking about where there's going to be more fuel, and that fuel is what limits how far north. So if you want to know why is this shaped like this, you go back to that very first graphic we showed you here. That measure of moisture, those dew points, and you see how all those purple colors are off the screen? Hopefully that is something that ends up limiting things for us. Mississippi Live Weather Radar, though, showing that shield of rainfall and obviously more active weather, including that tornado watch back out there into Louisiana and Texas. Let's look at how things go from here. First off, as we show you the overall kind of threat graphic here, I think one of the main impacts to say with this is that the confidence is not high on any type of severe weather out of this, thankfully. But a brief spin-up tornado is possible. I mean, it's something I can't rule out because of just where the positioning on where that front could get up here. And if you get a storm that attaches to the front, not impossible. But this is not a tornado outbreak. This is unlikely to be a situation where we have more than one or two, and even that might be overstating it there. Again, low confidence, I would say, still on damaging wind gusts, hail. There's a limiting flooding potential there just because of the rainfall before in advance. So maybe that one I could argue just a little bit higher, but even that might be pushing it. Let's look at Futurecast, though. As you can see, we do a pretty good job depicting this shield kind of rainfall that we generally have from most locations out there at this time. That's kind of the overbearing kind of headline at this instant. But I think the bigger story here is, again, this front. And it's just kind of a cutoff, right? If I slide it all the way over here for a moment, notice how there's a big difference in what this looks like up north, right? This is all kind of connected. What we call a shield of rainfall, stratiform, however you want to put it. This is all kind of connected and does not have the same fuel as what you have south of this front, right? These are disconnected there. Sometimes we would call them discrete storms, and those are going to be more likely to have some rotation with them, in particular closer to this front, where some of those are quite a bit stronger out there into Louisiana. So what happens for us, and how does this play out? We're looking at 8:30 here, and I'll bring it in a little bit closer. We're not going to come all the way in quite yet. What this does have is has more of these discrete individual storms trying to develop out here. Greenville, back out there to Bastrop and Vicksburg. Here's the deal. That moisture we were looking at a second ago is charging northward, but it's still, I mean, this is probably the north side of where that dew point influx is there. So I think there's kind of a limit on how far north these end up producing rotation that's substantial enough. But I do see a couple of these. And this one there, we depict north of Vicksburg there by about 10 p.m. could be one of those where it has clean inflow coming off of the Gulf of Mexico, maybe just enough of everything to get that rotation in a way that we'd have to watch it. So where does that go? Well, this gets it farther north, closer to Greenwood and Grenada and Clarksdale here. And then as you notice, it's all just kind of a big cluster at that point. So things are a little bit out of sync for these to be well-organized, well-fueled, rotating storms, at least initially here. But then there's always just a couple more coming because the front isn't through. And so that batch there, still kind of a broken line of storms, some rotation possible in it. And so I think there's still this time period. And we're after midnight here, where a few of these rotating back toward Vicksburg and Yazoo City, perhaps Grenada, and this might be a little bit slow, but we have these individual storms kind of merging in advance. So there's enough evidence there that I think it's, unlike last week, that I was really underwhelmed by what we were looking at as far as the severe weather potential is concerned. I'm not high on this potential, but nowhere near as underwhelmed as we were last week. It wouldn't be inconceivable if there was enough moisture to get one of these rotating thunderstorms to try to briefly produce a tornado. So we're going to be monitoring things overnight. If you have the Mississippi Live Weather app, and I'll pop that up here just again for you, those QR codes here for a moment. And I'll try to keep some of the other stuff on the screen. It's kind of balanced. I've got a lot of stuff on there at the same time. But we'll have alerts here as necessary. Our live stream is always at the top of the app. So it's one of those, you don't have to go searching for us where we at on Facebook. We're right there on the live stream if that's something that becomes necessary. I don't think it's impossible to get a few of these to try to rotate and produce tornadoes. But there is a kind of clear cutoff here. You'll also notice if I were to draw, let's just use the yellow here and just draw a line. This is kind of the southern end of our viewing area as we're tracking it now. We might go a little farther south, but even just drawing that one line there, the storms south of that are substantially more well put together than the ones farther north. But one thing we do know without question, as we bring this in, it's going to be a kind of messy morning commute tomorrow, especially if you get out super early, 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. There's going to be a lot of heavy rainfall and definitely decent amount of lightning, maybe even some strong winds, and not impossible to have some warnings out of this early tomorrow. So you want to build in some extra time. Our meteorologist, Maggie McCauley, will have updates starting tomorrow at 6:30 a.m. on regularly scheduled. But if we have to come in a little earlier, she'll be doing that. She'll be monitoring things. We'll be ahead of that there. And if we have tornadoes, things like that, it's always a team effort in that scenario. So tomorrow morning, 57 we show in Tupelo and Amory. Normal this time of year is 39, so just way, way, way above normal with, again, low 60s there for beginning temperatures. Greenwood, Belzona, 58 Kosciuszko, 58 degrees in Louisville, and 57 there in Macon. Your school day forecast dropping off with rainfall and thunderstorms likely, so maybe waiting in the car as we wait for that bus to get there for you. We're 70 by lunchtime, 73 by the final bell, with rain chances moving from west to east through the area and eventually there into Alabama. Here's another look at Futurecast, and this particular version, I'm going to wind this just a little bit more to kind of show you that we don't fully shut off the rainfall with this, but you'll notice that as we go in the mid-morning, a few more thunderstorms right along that blue line, right along that front, start strengthening just a little bit more there. So increasing somewhat more in intensity, possibly Aberdeen, Kosciuszko. We show 11 a.m. toward around noontime or so. If I look a little closer there, I'm going to bring this in close. We'll look at some of these individual ones here for a second. I mean, that definitely looks like a rotating thunderstorm there around Macon and closer to Columbus and out there toward around locations in Marion, Lamar counties in Alabama. So we're going to have to watch this really closely to see if there's enough fuel at this time. I'll see if I can pull up our CAPE, which is what we kind of assess that with here in just a moment to look at this, because I do think that there could be still just enough there that a few of those thunderstorms, even through maybe 2 to 3 o'clock, could try to re-strengthen and possibly try to produce an isolated strong wind gust, and a tornado is not impossible as well. In fact, speaking to that point, looking at the severe weather risk on your Tuesday, it gets a lot more likely to the east simply because of the opportunity. There's just more time where that could be the case. But it wouldn't be shocking at all to get a couple rotating thunderstorms, perhaps even prompt a tornado watch for tomorrow if everything kind of goes the wrong way. If we see it actually play out this evening, that's something we'll have to watch. And then, as you can see there, tornado risk, again, that's why that is issued for locations in the south and east. Damaging winds, a lesser likelihood, and large hail, same thing. Again, these all come down to very limited number of reports. Certainly that threat greatest to the east. And then high temperatures for tomorrow. You can already see some of the slightly cooler air moving in from the north and west. You want to see the forecast and what we have out there for kind of our first look for the Egg Bowl here in a minute. Maybe you don't. Anyway, 70 there in Senatobia, 68 in South Haven, 70 degrees in Clarksdale. We're 70 in Holly Springs for highs tomorrow versus mid-70s down out here for Aliceville, for Columbus, and Macon. That's despite the fact you'll be rainy, even probably at your warmest part. And then behind this, as you can see, just a few little sprinkles kind of coming in behind this system as we have drier air that's kind of settling in as this moves on out. And that air is not just drier, it's quite a bit cooler as a big Canadian area of high pressure kind of clears things out. Does have some wintry precipitation with that all the way up there towards Chicago. So if you're hoping for snowfall down here, that's anything of substance is unlikely in this situation. So we're back in the 40s, closer to normal by early morning on your Wednesday. Again, normal, that 30-year average is 39, so we're obviously a lot closer to that there, as the wind chill is probably a bigger factor. Feeling like it'll be upper 30s there, Senatobia, Tunica, South Haven. So luckily, that in many cases, the kids are not in school this week because it would be chilly, and that Thanksgiving morning is going to be even colder as far as that is concerned. But I think will definitely kind of keep it clear into your Wednesday. Travel, not just here, but across the entire region, should be in pretty good shape. If we just go wide and just kind of look here for some travel trouble spots really across the eastern part of the United States, you got to go way north to start finding some of those out there closer to Chicago, because high pressure does a good job of just kind of clearing things out. Now, it will be windy, it will be chilly, but if you're talking about is there issues with storms, if you're heading out to the east, you got to go practically to the east coast there to be able to see some of those for Wednesday if you're traveling for your Thanksgiving holiday. So overall, at least in this part of the country, things are looking pretty good. Always have to watch those flights out of Chicago, though. Sometimes there are issues there. So high temperatures for your Wednesday expected to be in the middle to, in some cases, upper 50s. 61 where we should be. So we're running a little bit below that for this time of the year. Okay, Egg Bowl forecast. We teased it a couple of times. Mid-40s, kind of best case scenario there. North-northeast winds. It will be chillier than that. That means, again, with an 11 a.m. first kick, depending on how early you get out to do some of your tailgating, it could be really rough. So expect that to obviously probably be 30s by the time a lot of folks are out there. It certainly will feel like 30s initially. So for all those folks saying it hasn't felt like football weather, there you go. That also means it's going to be kind of chilly for that Mississippi Live Game of the Week. Still looking on that, on where we'll end up going there. We'll get all those nominees out and let you start voting on that tomorrow. So 7-day forecast. Obviously, it is a major change here from the 73 and the chances for storms, including some obviously overnight, and then the first part of tomorrow, even into tomorrow, maybe afternoon for locations very near the Alabama state line there. 73 that high. We're down to 48 for the low Wednesday morning, 56 Wednesday afternoon, and then down below the freezing point as we look toward your Thursday and Friday mornings there. So just in time for all your Black Friday shopping, or obviously the Egg Bowl, it's going to be a lot colder, but it's dry. And there's something to be said for that. Thankfully that we're not going to have at least it cold and rainy. It's just cold and adjust to it. Who knows, maybe that'll put more jackets on the Christmas list as far as that's concerned. As we roll into Saturday and Sunday, rain chances are there, including some thunderstorm chances in the extended forecast. And again, the pattern getting more active, so more and more likely to eventually have some stronger thunderstorms that figure into some of those chances. Before we kind of wrap things up here, again, I want to go back and show a graphic that I like to show. I show a lot, but I'm telling you, I would not stay up and watch this all night long. I love you guys, and I appreciate it. For sponsorship reasons, we need it. But the reality is, that if you have weather call and you have to work tomorrow, you need weather call. It'll wake you up if you have to get up. Otherwise, you wake up refreshed and ready to go tomorrow morning. So I always talk about weather call for that reason. It is just kind of a weight off your chest, so you don't necessarily have to worry about, what are we going to have all night long. So just to certainly recommend that. Keep that in mind. Before we go, I kind of promised this a minute ago here. I'm going to bring up Gabe for a second with me, and I'm going to dig up some CAPE for just a moment here. And I, of course, brought up the BAM, and then I didn't check to see if you were there. There you go. Okay, I'm gonna pull up CAPE here for a moment. So we can kind of talk through.
Well, I do want to say, while you're pulling that up, you're talking about instability and the tornado watch that's currently in effect and the potential for tornadoes for us overnight into Tuesday. There's already evidence that there's some tornadic weather down south and especially southwest, because Klein, Texas did get that confirmed tornado earlier on this afternoon. Now, that environment, completely different than what we have right now in North Mississippi, but as that warm front lifts, that's what we're watching the potential of. So, it's not a tornado outbreak, but possible.
Well, absolutely, and that's part of the reason we're talking about it. I'll bring up those dew points there you're talking about. And again, we mentioned this a minute ago at the beginning of this segment here, that you have all the purples down there, right? Like, this is where dew points are, mid 70s, versus up here where they're, well, gotta click it where you can see it, knocked, thankfully. So this moisture is gonna, keep kind of coming north as we go into this evening. But there's kind of a finite point, like, does it just, doesn't get, farther north than Greenville or all the way up to, Tupelo? Probably not. But it's coming. So our threat definitely increases this evening.
Yeah, and you see the tornado reports right there just outside of Houston. That's where Klein, Texas is located. And yeah, just a drastic change from what we're seeing up here. And folks, tonight, probably going to go to sleep and think, how is severe weather going to form in this environment? It's going to be that shift overnight.
Right.
Do what?
I said, and hopefully they're right.
Hopefully so. But, that's just going to change overnight. It's not going to be that typical nighttime forecast where we cool off and by 6 or 7 a.m. we're waking up and heading out the door to a little bit of a cooler start. No, it's going to be coolest as we get towards that 10, 11 o'clock hour. And then by then, we start to get that energy building back into the forecast. And that is, of course, going to up those dew points, which ups temperatures. And then we'll see some warmer temperatures probably by the time we're heading out the door tomorrow morning from where we go to sleep tonight. So that's just that change in the pattern, not your typical setup. But as we build into Futurecast, you can see that field building in right along Highway 82 and even for portions a little bit more north towards Water Valley, Bruce, and Houston. Now, these are not the highest values in fuel, but we are getting at least a surge in that. And you can see some higher values there towards Itala County and Holmes County, seeing some higher values of that fuel. Now, that fuel is going to be what we need
all the way until tomorrow morning before we get there.
Exactly.
Almost, the overnight stuff just is, it's to the south, but it's just kind of this wave that just doesn't break this far north.
And that's the thing we've been talking about behind the scenes, is how has Futurecast really done with that warm front? Because the positioning of that is what's driving our forecast overnight. So still some questions, and that's going to drive this fuel as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But notice there's plenty of fuel tomorrow. This is kind of one of the things we're talking about, that, there's a lot more fuel tomorrow than what we have out there for today. So if this front goes any slower, tomorrow could be a pretty interesting little day.
And we'd also almost be hoping for a little bit more rainfall, because then that's competing with each other for that energy. And so that's where you'd almost want a higher rainfall output to prevent severe weather in the process. But with that much fuel, if you get that leading edge to interact with this fuel, then you're looking at a pretty much potential for some strong winds and even the embedded tornado within that line that moves across the area. But yeah, night and day difference from what we have right now to this time tomorrow, tracking that fuel in the area. It's going to be a primed environment for sure.
It will be. So again, we will have our next updates on this coming up at 6 o'clock. A couple things we'll be looking at 6 o'clock related to this. We're going to look at those rotation tracks, where we see, where the extra bits of enhanced spin are going to be on this, what we call behind the scenes updraft helicity. We'll look at that coming up at 6 o'clock here. I'm hoping we can catch up with Adrian, who's with the North Mississippi Storm Chasers. He is down in southwest Mississippi. Hopefully we'll be able to talk to him for at least a brief moment then. And we'll have a more complex look at that travel forecast, and maybe it's pretty simple considering the way things are looking out there. All that come up at 6 o'clock on Mississippi Live Weather. We hope you join us there. And again, thank you for watching us here at the Room to Room Weather Center at 5.
We come from a long line of farmers, and there's a sense of pride, but there's also a significant amount of pressure.
Farmers have to take care of their physical and their mental health, because what's a farm without a farmer?
Watching the sun come up, that's my time. I can have a cup of coffee, and every day is a new opportunity.
That's cool.
Your hand's gotten so Yay!
Don't forget to check in on yourself. Love your mind.